The hum of the temporal engine settled into silence as Dr. Elena Cross stood alone in the observatory, the lab's low light casting her shadow across the cracked tile floor. Through the reinforced window, she stared at a dying forest once known for its biodiversity. The air outside looked heavy, thick with ash and decay, and the trees, stripped of leaves and life, stood like bones in the soil. She'd seen the models, knew the data, but seeing it, feeling it was different. A soft chime broke the quiet, and her eyes flicked to the monitor. The blue-winged butterfly, once a keystone pollinator, was gone from the ecosystem map. Not marked extinct, just missing, like it had never existed. The simulation stuttered, recalculated, and displayed the words that made her stomach clench. Timeline divergence detected. She exhaled slowly. Had been a controlled mission. Passive observation only. The chronopod's cloaking field had been tested 100 times. She was never supposed to be seen. Never supposed to interact. But she had. Just once. Just a sound. A snapped twig in the forest of 1994. And that one moment had changed everything. "Elena," came a voice from the doorway. He turned. Dr. Rakesh Thorne entered. His steps deliberate. His expression unreadable. Time had etched deeper lines into his face than she remembered, but his presence still grounded her. "You saw the divergence," she said. He nodded, walking past her to the central console. The models unraveling. Agriculture, insect populations, bird migrations. All collapsing. The sequence traces back to the butterfly. "The boy nearly fell," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." "I know." She looked down at her hands. "He was just a child." Rakesh stared at the screen. "And that butterfly was just an insect. Until it wasn't." She wanted to argue, to say that saving one life shouldn't cost the world its balance. But the data didn't care about intentions. It showed cause and effect in cold, cascading certainty. The boy had been chasing the butterfly. She had startled it. Veered off. The child didn't fall. He lived. And somewhere down that line, he grew up to become the architect of a global agricultural empire. Elena Cross. Her brother. She hadn't known it was him at the time. She hadn't recognized the child's face. Not until the AI reconstructed the timeline and filled in the gaps. She pressed her fingers to her temples. "He died in a flood. That's what I remember. That's what happened." Rakesh handed her a tablet. It displayed a new version of her family's history. No flood. No death. No grief that drove her to ecological research. Instead, Asher lived, and became the man who patented soil sterilizers, eradicated natural pollination, and replaced it with synthetic alternatives that ultimately sterilized the planet itself. A silence settled between them, thick with implication. "There's one way to undo it," Rakesh said finally. "One moment. You return, you don't interfere. Let the timeline resume as it was. And let him die," she said, her voice brittle. He didn't answer. The chronopod loomed behind her like a verdict. Elena stared at it, pulse ticking in her throat. If she did nothing, the world would continue collapsing. If she went back and did less, her brother would be gone. But so would the consequences of his life. A part of her wished she didn't know. That she could unsee the causality. But knowledge was the price of time travel. "I'll go," she said. "You'll only have one shot," Rakesh warned. "You step on another twig, and we might end up with something worse." "I won't make a sound." The pod sealed around her like a tomb. She calibrated the coordinates, March 21, 1994, and felt the rush of displacement begin. The present vanished in a shimmer of light. She arrived just as the morning sun stretched over the forest canopy. The air smelled of wet bark and wildflowers, and the trail beneath her feet felt solid and real in a way the future no longer did. She saw him. A boy in a red sweatshirt, chasing a blur of blue wings. Laughing. Alive. Elena stood frozen behind a tree, her presence wrapped in the pod's cloaking field. The boy moved closer to the cliff's edge, just as before. Her body screamed to move, to act. But this time she did nothing. The butterfly fluttered. The boy leapt, and the forest went still. She turned away before she heard the fall. When the pod returned her to the future, the screen blinked once, then recalibrated. The forest outside the observatory window looked fuller, alive if not untouched, 100 small signs of regrowth. She stepped forward, fingers trembling as they hovered above the data feed. The blue wing was back. Asher Cross was gone. The world had shifted again. Elena Cross stood in the biotemporal facility's reconstructed corridor, blinking at the subtle changes around her. The lighting felt warmer. The humming machines emitted a slightly different frequency. Familiar faces in lab coats passed her, nodding with a strange familiarity she couldn't place. Their names came to her slowly, memories trickling in from the restructured timeline, overlaying what she remembered with what had now become real. She'd done it. Undone the ripple. Sacrificed her brother to restore the balance. Or so she had thought. "Elena!" A voice called from behind. She turned to see Dr. Ava Lynn, a specialist in chronofeedback systems, striding toward her with a tablet tucked under her arm. Ava's face was tense, her tone a shade too urgent. "We're still picking up divergence patterns," Ava said, lowering her voice as she matched Elena's pace. "It's localized now, not ecological, behavioral, human-level anomalies." Elena's gut twisted. How many? Only one, but it's significant. A persistent fracture. They turned into a small briefing room, the walls lined with digital whiteboards displaying streams of data. Ava pulled up a visual. Timeline strands layered over each other like woven fabric. One thread pulsed in red. It branched off at the point Elena had returned from the past. "It's you," Ava said softly. "Your presence in the 1994 field has left a temporal echo." Elena's breath caught. "But I followed protocol." The pod remained cloaked. "I didn't speak. I didn't move." Ava tapped the screen, isolating the red line. "You didn't have to. The anomaly isn't external. Consciousness-based. Memory echo. A fragment of you was retained by someone. That's impossible." "Maybe. But the model doesn't lie. Someone from 1994 retained a sense of your presence, and it influenced a decision path enough to fracture a segment of the timeline." Elena stepped back from the screen. Her chest felt hollow. She had accepted the price of undoing Asher's life, grieved it, believed it was enough. But now she had introduced something worse, a subtle, undetected anomaly that could corrupt reality in quieter, more insidious ways. "Who was it?" she asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Ava hesitated, then turned the screen. A photograph filled the display. A girl, maybe 11 years old, standing at the edge of a forest trail. Hazel eyes wide, mouth slightly open in awe. The AI's tag beneath the image read, "Subject, Clara Monroe." "I don't remember her," Elena said. "She wasn't in the original observation path. But in the altered past, she was within 50 meters of your pod. We believe she saw something she couldn't explain. She would have forgotten. A child's imagination. Except she didn't. She grew up to become a quantum theorist. Specialized in memory artifacts and theoretical timelines. Founded an institute dedicated to the study of time perception." Eva paused. "She wrote about you." Elena's knees buckled into a chair. Her thoughts scattered. She had gone back to restore balance, and in doing so, inspired someone else to chase the same forbidden path. "We've tracked her work," Ava continued. "She's close to a breakthrough. Unregulated time manipulation, using experimental memory reconstruction tech. She claims memories are the key to bypassing the need for chronopods altogether." A cold sweat broke across Elena's neck. "She's trying to breach time with her mind." Ava nodded grimly. "And if she succeeds, there won't be ripples. There'll be floods. Every person who remembers something differently could manifest a new version of reality." Elena stood. Her voice steady despite the dread curling in her chest. "Where is she now?" "New London. The Institute's underground. Shielded. Off-grid. We'd need clearance to get close. I don't need clearance. You're planning to go back in time to stop her. No, Elena said. I'm going to find her in the present and talk to her. If she carries an echo of me, maybe I'm the only one she'll trust. Maybe I can stop her before she tears another hole in time. Ava didn't argue. She simply handed over a drive loaded with coordinates, dossiers, and surveillance logs. Elena took it, her hands already moving to gather her field gear. The shuttle to New London felt slower than it was. The entire journey played out beneath a steel-colored sky, rain streaking across the windows in rhythmic pulses. Elena's mind drifted to Asher, not as he had become, but as he had been. A boy with wild questions and messy curiosity. If she had let herself believe for even a second that saving him was justified, she would have never stepped into the pod again. But this was different. Clara Monroe had never asked to be changed. Had never consented to carrying a fragment of someone else's choice. When the shuttle landed, a black vehicle awaited her. Inside, a silent agent handed her a keycard and pointed to a door recessed beneath a warehouse facade. Elena entered alone. The institute was quiet. Too quiet. She passed white corridors lit by humming fluorescents, her boots echoing against polished floors. Finally, she entered a chamber filled with memory maps, glowing neural networks displayed in floating panels. In the center stood a woman in her 40s, eyes sharp, posture tense. "You're real," Clara said, her voice filled with wonder and accusation. "You were in the forest." Elena nodded. "I didn't mean for you to see me. But I did. And everything I've built, this institute, this research, it started from that moment. You changed my life. I didn't want to." Clara approached, gaze narrowing. "But you did. You're part of me. And if I can remember you, I can remember more. Imagine what we could do. What we could repair. Or destroy," Elena said gently. "Clara, memory is not a map. It's a mirror. It reflects what we want to see. I don't believe that. My memories led me to truth." "No," Elena said. "They led you to me. But I'm not a destination. I'm a warning." Clara's face flickered, doubt blooming like a bruise beneath the surface. "I came here not to stop you," Elena said, stepping forward, "but to ask you to choose. The same way I had to. When you stand at the edge of the impossible, you can either leap, or you can step back and see what's still worth protecting." Clara stared at her for a long time. Then, without a word, she powered down the memory grid. The lights dimmed. The panels vanished.